Happy Friday. Sorry I'm a little slow starting today. We went to look at some plants this morning to make our house a little prettier. Anywho, I thought I would start by going over the homework. I'm only going to go over number 1 because 3 and 5 were correct most of the time. I think all of the time, actually. I would say the only thing is make sure you put units squared for number 3 and then feet. I said squared. Goodness gracious, I got to get that out of my head. Units cubed, for number 3, and then feet cubed because we didn't know the units on 3, but we do know the units on 5. Now, with number one was the trick question, okay? Number 1, you do not want to use this 5 as your height, okay? It is not your height, okay? Your height needs to be drawn here. And then that makes a right triangle. So we're going to come over here and we're going to do our right triangle. I gave you the radius of 3. I gave you the hypotenuse or the slant height of 5. And you need to find the height. So a squared plus 3 squared equals 5 squared. And maybe you might have recognized this as a 3, 4, 5 triangle. But if you didn't, no big deal. Let's work it out. And then subtract the 9. And you get 16, which is a perfect square of 4. Okay, so our height is going to be 4. So now we're going to do volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, sorry, let me kind of box that off a little bit. Okay. So we're going to go straight across the numerator. Remember, we kind of can pretend this is keeping on. So 3 squared is 9. 9 times 4 is 36. Oh, let me comment on this because some people left it 36 over 3, but 36 is divisible by 3. So if you type it in, 36 divided by 3, you get 12. And so that's what our final answer should be. Okay? And then our unit, we do not know the unit, so we'll put unit cubed. It actually turns out to be the same volume as number 5. So that's just coincidental, but all right, so that's how you do that one. It was a trick, so you may want to put a star by that one so you don't fall for it later on next week when we have a quiz over this, okay? Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to learn 2 more shapes. Well, I guess that's kind of maybe more like 5 or 6. We'll discuss why that is in just a minute. So if we look back at our formula sheet, we have learned cylinder, we have learned cone, and then we also learned rectangular prism. That was kind of old stuff. So today we're going to do the pyramid and the sphere. So we're going to start with the sphere because it's pretty straightforward. Volume is 4/3 pi r cubed. So anytime there's a pi, you guys, pi is when there is something circular. I think I said that yesterday. So you're pretty much going to have it in a sphere and a cone and a cylinder because they all involve circles. Okay, so let's type it in. You just need the radius. That's really all you need. In this first picture, I do believe that 4 is the diameter. So I think the 4 goes for this whole thing. So we only want the radius. So we're going to do 4 divided by 2, which will give me 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to do 4/3 pi. Oops, y'all, I messed up. Look, the formula is cubed, and I think I said cubed, but I believe I wrote squared. So sorry. Whew, okay. That should be in blue as well. Okay, sorry about that. So let's try that again. All right, so pi, and then my radius is 2 cubed. So remember, I don't have to exaggerate this fraction, but I'm going to. So what I'm going to type in the calculator, I should go to Desmos really quickly. Oh, there's the, I'm going to go to Desmos so you can see how to type this in. So when you want to type in 4 times, now I'm going to do 2, and then you see how it has that A to the B? You're going to put a 3 and then hit enter. So it's 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2, which is 4, 4 times 2, which is 8, and then 8 times 4, which is 32, okay? Now, if you want to do your handheld calculator, the way you do it is you're going to type in 4, and then open parentheses, and then type the 2, close parentheses, and then you're going to hit the caret button, and then 3, okay? Then you should also get 32. And then we just want to ask ourselves, is 32 divisible by 3? The answer is no, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So 32 over 3 pi, and what was our unit? Inches cubed. Okay, does that make sense? Sphere is pretty straightforward because you really only have to have one thing, which is the radius. All right, if a basketball's radius, so a basketball is clearly a sphere, radius is 4 inches, how much air will it hold? So we're getting into word problems where you just need to recognize that air or water filling a balloon, stuff like that, that is volume because it's the space taken up inside of the 3D object. All right, so we're going to fill in the formula. Volume equals 4/3 pi radius cubed. So we're going to type it in, 4 and then 4 caret 3, which is 256 pi over 3. Or do y'all see, you could have typed in 4 to the 4th power because there are 3 4s here and another 4 there. So it's really the same as 4 to the 4th power, but that's just a little side note. All right, if you divide that by 3, does 256 divide by 3? And the answer is no, so I'm just going to leave it like that, and then inches cubed. Okay, so there's that answer. Now, the figure to the right represents so can y'all tell it's basically a sphere cut in half? So if you think about like the northern and southern parts of the world, like when you take the globe and you cut it in half, what are those called? The northern and southern hemispheres, okay? So hemi is like, you've probably heard that word before, but hemisphere is another word for half of a sphere. So there are 2 ways you can do this. You can still use the same formula we have, and then at the end just divide it all by 2. Or I think an easier way is, it's not on the formula sheet, but it's easy to remember. You just take this top number, the numerator, and divide it by 2, and that's your formula for a hemisphere. So volume of hemisphere equals, instead of 4/3, it's 2/3. Okay? So, just FYI, you could do it where you do the regular sphere formula and divide by 2 at the end, but I think this is just easier, and it's easy for students to remember. Just take the 4, cut it in half. All right, so now let's do that. So 10 is the diameter. We want the radius, so the radius is going to equal 5. So let's fill in the formula. So volume equals 2/3 pi r cubed. Okay, so we're going to type in, I hear some little footsteps knocking at my door, running down the hall. Oh goodness, he wants to come in. So we're going to type in 2 times 5 cubed, which is 250 pi, and then we're going to see if that's divisible by 3. It is not, so we're going to leave it just like that. Okay, so 5 cubed and then times it by 2 is 250, and then divide by 3. Okay, so let me say hey to them. I'm recording. Hey. Sorry. Oh goodness, that makes me so sad. And then we're done there. Oh, buddy. It's almost the weekend where we can play all together all weekend. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so sorry I got a little sidetracked there. Now we're going to go to, so that was sphere and hemisphere. So now let's go to pyramid. And I'm going to tell you that pyramid, I'm going to go ahead and preface that pyramid is the most complicated formula because of this right here, the capital B. So let's write the formula and then I'll explain why. Okay, so this capital B does not stand for base. Okay, it kind of does, but it stands for the area of the base. So the reason that this is difficult is because the bases can change with pyramids, okay? So you can't just say the base is always going to be a square or it's always going to be a rectangle, because it depends on the type of problem you have. If you think about like the Egyptian pyramids in Egypt, they're square pyramids. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% positive, but that's what I guess, based on the way they look. But you can have many different types of pyramids. So the first thing we have to do is we have to find just the area of the base. So is the bottom part of the shape a square, a rectangle, a triangle, etc. And then we find that area. Okay, then we'll fill that into the formula. So it's a little bit of a process. So just kind of take your time. I've tried to spell it out here as we work. But the first thing you always need to decide is, what kind of pyramid is it? And I'll tell you, pyramid can sometimes be a little confusing, but a pyramid always comes to a point. So think about P's, pyramid point. And it's kind of like a cone, but a cone has a circular base as opposed to a, square, rectangle, or triangle or more. So here's what I was just saying. Pyramids can have different bases, which is how they are named. So with this first one, this base or the bottom of the pyramid is what shape? Well, that's a triangle. So it's called a triangular pyramid. Okay. All right, what about the next one? So I can't tell 100% if this is a square or a rectangle, but I'm going to guess, because it's not 100% clear that it's a square, I'm going to call it a rectangle. So it's a rectangular pyramid. And then what about this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So 5 sides is a pentagon. So this is a pentagonal pyramid. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to stick to rectangles, squares, and triangles only, just because that's enough. I mean, we can get much more complicated, but having you kind of remember 3 is enough. All right, so let's start with the easier ones, and we'll kind of go to the harder ones. So number 11 says, first of all, what is the shape of the base? Because that's how we name it, okay? So do we know enough to decide if this is a square or a rectangle? And we certainly do. 8 and 8 means it is a square. Okay? All right, so we're going to call this a square pyramid. So the first thing we do is we're just going to worry about this base right here. We're only going to find the area. So you guys, how do we find the area of a square? Well, it's the same for a rectangle and a square. You're going to do length times width. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find that capital B. The big B is what I call it, which is 8 times 8. Okay, and that is 64. So that is the area of that base, or the big B. Now, what is the height of this pyramid? The height of this pyramid is 9, and I'll put centimeters squared because we're doing area. And then this is just 9 centimeters. And now we can plug into the volume formula. Okay, so the volume formula goes 1/3 big B, which we just found big B to be 64. And I can keep that going, and then times the height. Okay, now why is there no pi in this problem? Well, there's no pi because there's no circular base, okay? There's no circle involved here at all, so that's kind of nice. All we're going to do is just times 64 times 9, okay? And that gives us 576, and then we're going to divide by 3. And that actually does work out nicely. If it didn't, I would leave it in fraction form, but it does. So that's 192 centimeters cubed. So the first thing we did was we found the area of the base, then we times it by the height, and then we divided by 3. Okay? All right, let's try another one. All right, so we have another pyramid because it is going to a point. So let's look at the base. Let's change color here for a little variation. All right, so what is this shape of the base? Well, if we have a 10 and an 8, it's not the same, so it's going to be a rectangle. And so how do we find the area of a rectangle? It's the same way we just did a square, length times width. So we're going to do 10 times 8 is our big B, or the area of just that base. So that's 80. Okay, and now the height is 6. Okay, and so now we can do our formula. 1/3 big B, and then times 6. Okay, so we're going to do 80 times 6. I'm not really doing times 1 because we know that. And then we're going to divide by 3. And that equals 160. It comes out as a nice whole number. Inches cubed. Okay, so we have a rectangular pyramid. We find the area of the rectangle first, which was 80. And then we're going to times it by the height. All right, now for the trickster, the one that can sometimes be the most confusing. All right, so we have another pyramid, but what is the area of this, or what is the base? Okay, so that shape is a triangle. Now, if you do not remember how to find the area of a triangle, I will remind you. It is 1/2 base times height. Okay? So, in this picture, you are not looking, this is very confusing because there is a height of the pyramid and there is a height of the base. So you have to look for different heights. There are basically two heights. So we are just worried about this flat part down here. Okay, the reason I'm not coloring it is because I need to see those numbers. So I'm not going to try to confuse you with putting too many numbers, but what is the base of the base? So if we're just looking at this part right here, the base, do y'all agree, is that 8? Okay, so this is little b. And then what is the height of the base? It's that 4.6. Okay, so we're going to do 1/2 of 8 and then 4.6. All right, so let's just type that in. 1/2 times 8 times 4.6. And that is 18.4. Okay. So what I just found was I found the area of this base. Remember, area is just two-dimensional. It's flat, okay? So that is just the area of that base right there. Now, what is the height of the pyramid? How tall is the actual pyramid? Is it the 8.1 or is it the 7.1? Well, the 8.1 is slanted and the 7.1 is straight up. So that is our height. We want straight up and down. This is what we call a distractor, okay? So the height is 7.1 centimeters. And now we can fill in the formula. So we're going to do 1/3. Big B is what we just found, so 18.4. And then times our height. I don't know why I put parentheses when I didn't do that on any of the other ones, sorry. Okay, so we're going to do 18.4 times 7.1. And that equals 130.64. And then we're going to divide by 3. We already have decimals, so we might as well just keep it that way. All right, so 43.55. And then what was our unit? Centimeters cubed. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and tell you. Let me erase this coloring in here. All right, let me go back and kind of re-explain. This is the base of the base. So this is the length of the base of the big base, which is a triangle. Okay, so it's the length of the base of this guy. This 4.6 is the height of that flat triangle. This is the height of the whole pyramid, and this was distracting us. Okay, so if you think about it, we did 1/3 big B times H. However, big B is 1/2 base times height, and then we times by the height. Okay, so I'm trying to do it step by step, where you do this part first, right, which is the 18.4, and then you just plug it into the formula. So that is why a pyramid can be a little tricky. But I will tell you, I'm only going to keep it to these three. Either a square pyramid, a rectangular pyramid, or a triangular pyramid. Square and rectangle have the same formula here and here, so that makes them a little easier. This one is the one that you have to be a little careful for with the big B. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do there. I want you to try 2, 4, and 6. Okay, so your options are a sphere, hemisphere, or pyramid. 2 is probably the hardest one. So try your best with number 2. 4 should be pretty straightforward, and 6 should be pretty straightforward. But try your best. Go back and look at the pyramid problems that I just did if you need to. And we'll do kind of a complete practice over the next couple of days next week before we have a quiz. Awesome. Y'all have a great weekend.